Hello and welcome to another episode of F major added second chord. I am Miles, and I apologize in advance because my voice is it's a little ragged out from the 24-hour theater festival I did yesterday. But it's alright. It's alright. I can talk about whatever I want, I've been told, and no one has told me otherwise. So I'm going to discuss this week the saxophone. Because the saxophone is pretty great. I have long been enamored with the saxophone. Sometimes I idly fantasize about playing the saxophone, but then I have to learn the saxophone. And that would take effort. But if I did learn, just think. I could pay tribute to George Michael and play Careless Whisper. I don't even like 80s music. But Careless Whisper, the saxophone riff is unarguable. That's a high point for the decade right there. Or say, jazz. I could learn jazz. My roommate has been trying to get me into jazz for as long as I've known him. And it's working. What am I thinking? Coleman Hawkins. You know Coleman? You might know Coleman Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins played the tenor saxophone, and he played it very well. There's a recording of Coleman Hawkins playing April in Paris. I think it's from 45. It might be from 1941. It's almost definitely the 40s. I gotta check. A 40s recording of Coleman Hawkins playing April in Paris, and it is actually perfect. It's quiet, the strings are playing softly and gently, and he starts to play. And when he starts to play, I know it's a saxophone. But the first time I heard it, for a split second, it could have been a voice. It could have been a human voice. That's how rich and warm it is. It would be this beautiful contralto, but it's a saxophone, and he plays it. Plays the hell out of it. The saxophone has, and there's probably technical reasons for this that I don't understand, wonderful capacity for displaying emotion. Because it sounds like someone yelling. The saxophone sounds enough like someone yelling that it sounds emotional. But like good yelling. Not like bad yelling. This is a bad metaphor, but the point, I think, carries. But when it's played softly, of course, it also has, then it's not yelly, but it's, I don't know. It's like a humming. But the word hum and the associations of the word hum don't really do justice, I had a point and I can't remember what it was. I'm talking about the saxophone. I think sometimes about learning the saxophone. But that'll take time and effort and energy. I'll have to buy a saxophone. And then I'm going to have to discipline myself. I am not good at learning how to play instruments. With the discipline and such, it's like, oh yeah, learning to play an instrument, it's great. And then with the discipline and such, it's like, when I was learning how to play the guitar, because I play the guitar with some degree of skill, early on, it took me a long time to learn how to play chords. Not because I was like, it was a difficult thing. Not because it was a difficult thing, but because I couldn't be bothered. I was just, chords. It really needs chords. And what I would do instead, I would just find, I need to play a C chord. I would fret a C, on the second string or the fifth string or what have you, And then I would strum the entire guitar. So like, yeah, that's one note and strum, and it was just this discordant mess. And you could sort of hear that it was supposed to be a C chord, because when you fret a note, it sounds different than an open string. But it was still very obviously a discordant mess, which I am not proud of. I look on those days with a interesting mix of revulsion and shame, but we are beyond those days now. Now I can actually play a C chord and precious little else. I'm very proud of myself. But I'm confident that if I actually... I'm older now. I'm more responsible. Perhaps. I could find it in my heart, I think, to actually learn how to play the instrument. Then I could play, like, David Bowie played the saxophone. God rest his soul, he could play the saxophone. Subterraneans, like Careless Whisper, I don't like 80s, but it's whatever, it's great. April in Paris, also great. But Subterraneans is actually, because the synthesizers, it's from his 1977 album, Low, which is a classic, of course. But Subterraneans is actually like the only song on Low that I listen to with any regularity. Vortsava's, whatever, it's good, and there's always crashing in the same car, which is relatable, very relatable. But Subterraneans, something about the way the synthesizers, just how cold they are and how distant his voice is, but how warm and how organic his saxophone playing is, and how lonely, how effectively lonesome it is. It's immortal. Subterraneans, if not, it should be immortal. Just because of how effective it paints the emotional picture that it does, how effectively it does that. And then there are other songs with the saxophone, like Palace Athena. There's a blast back to the 90s for you. And Palace Athena sounds like it was recorded in the 90s, because it was. But the saxophone, and something about the way it's recorded, I think it's double tracked, it sounds absolutely enormous, and it is beautiful. It soars over the mix, and it's like, it's on top of it all. And that's all. Oh, David Bowie's dead too. It's times like these that I contemplate my mortality. But more to the point, I contemplate learning to play the saxophone. I have no good reason not to do it other than time and energy. I'll make it a New Year's resolution some other year. One year when I'm not quixotically pursuing a podcast up and down a hill. But for now, this is what I'm doing. And for now, I think I'll call it here. I went 11 last week, I'll do 9 this week. Next week I'll do 10. Next week I'll upload on a Sunday. But, sometimes you have a 24-hour theater festival and it kind of messes up your schedule, so I will talk to you all next week. Thank you, and goodbye.